understand that if someone of Dele's stature, if someone of Dele's visibility, if someone with Dele's voice, if someone with Dele's public and popular appeal can go through what Dele went through, it's no longer about Dele. This is a signal to the rest of us that we better shut up. Because if we don't, if this is what we can do to the best of you, then the rest of you better keep your mouths shut. That really was what was going on. And as you know, the outrage in Nigeria was significant. There was a lot of outrage. A lot of that outrage was online. So, Twitter, X was on fire. WhatsApp groups were on fire. And one of the things that a number of us began to do was, we've watched this movie before. Something happens, we all get outraged. And within a week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, that outrage passes. What we wanted to do was to ensure that this outrage would not pass. And that the prediction that the system always makes, that, give them 2 weeks and they're all going to go back home, that we did something that was beyond that. So starting almost about a week ago now, we had a few conversations. Rudolf, you recall that I had one of those conversations with you, spoke with other people. So others reached out to a number of other folks that had been very vocal about this issue. And we decided that this time around, we had to do something different. And what was the different thing we did is we decided, let's come together, take all of our individual voices that we're expressing right now and come together as a collective. And if we come together as a collective, let's do it in order to be able to achieve three things. One, set up a legal defense fund, not just for Dele, but all the other people that are being challenged by the system. And why is the legal defense fund important? Because one of the ways the system gets you is they stretch you financially. There's no case, Dele right now has about 5 different cases in 5 different courts across the whole country. So one of the things they do, because they have the means, is you take a young activist who is speaking truth to power, a young investigative journalist, and you open 10 different cases against that journalist across the country. How does he defend himself? Where are the people, where are the lawyers that are going to go? If he doesn't have pro bono lawyers who stand up and say they will help him, and even if pro bono lawyers stand up and say they want to help you, at some point, if the case continues to drag on, they too have mouths to feed. They can't, they can't support you pro bono for a long time. So the first thing we said we needed to do was set up a legal defense fund to make sure that no matter what the system does, we would have the means and the capacity to be able to help our activist brothers and sisters respond. The second thing was to coordinate action, because the truth of the matter is, these cases are taking place in court, but they're not legal issues. They are political issues. The intent is to stifle the opposition. The intent is to oppress. And if that's the case, then maybe there are certain things we can do politically as well to ensure that we fight back. And so that was the second thing, was to find a platform where we could have global action. And some of that action was, there were folks in Canada that were engaging with Amnesty. There are people who started petitions. Afe Babalola has a massive $10 million endowment in King's College London. Afe Babalola, it turns out, long before Dele wrote any book about him in 2004, was actually named in the WikiLeaks cable releases. The US government, apparently in 2004, not even apparently, this is clearly in WikiLeaks, had indicated that Afe Babalola was the bagman, the money man, that was taking monies from the then president, Olusegun Obasanjo, and giving it to members of the appeal court sitting in judgment over the elections of Boni Haruna, the PDP candidate at the time in Adamawa. And he was the one who had given $250,000 each to each of the 5 justices. This was what was alleged in the WikiLeaks tape. And who wrote the WikiLeaks report? They were operatives of the CIA, operatives of US intelligence sitting in the embassy. We would never have known this if the WikiLeaks cables had not been leaked. So whatever anybody is saying now about Afe Babalola's complicity in the corruption of the Nigerian judicial process, these are things that have been documented and on record. And I wish he would actually go and sue WikiLeaks. I want him to sue the US government, because whatever Dele has said is tame in comparison to what is written about him in the diplomatic cables of the US that are now public record. So the second thing was global coalition. How do we come together and ensure that we're fighting this legal challenge and the truly political assault on the Nigerian people with equal political measures, petitions, engagements, rapprochements to different organizations. And then the third one was basically establishing a whistleblowers initiative. If Dele had been sued for libel by Afe Babalola in the US, Dele would have the right to subpoena Afe Babalola. He would also have the right to subpoena all the Supreme Court justices that he mentioned. He would have the right to subpoena the registrar of the courts, where one of the claims he made was that there was a ruling of the Supreme Court that was, that basically changed over time. Rulings don't rewrite themselves. So one of the realities of corruption in Nigeria is corruption might happen in the shadows, but there's a clerk that took the file. There's somebody who took the Ghana must go back. There was somebody who received an SMS text message. There's a teller who knows that there was a bank transfer. And if we can incentivize those people to provide us with information, if needs be, even provide them with financial or material incentives, then we can begin to put fear, a holy fear, into these people who think they are untouchable. Because one thing that I know about corruption is that there are always people who feel shortchanged in the process. There are people who are angered by it because they just don't like it. But more often than not, it is people who feel shortchanged, right? I am the guy who nobody is paying. I'm the clerk who nobody is paying a fair wage, but I'm also the person who has to take $250,000 to the home of a judge. Well, guess what? If you ask me, and I have that information, and maybe I held on to certain documents, I might make it available. So the third is the whistleblowers initiative. So the three things